Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Deborah. If this is your first time tuning in, this video is just my little attempt to put a little bit of light back into the world. And one of the ways that I want to do this for now is to talk about domestic abuse and how we could recognize the signs and how we could overcome or survive after domestic abuse. Now, I've done a few videos in the past. If you have a chance, you could look at them. But today I want to particularly talk about how to survive after domestic abuse. For some reason, particularly because of my experience, I can talk about this, it seems almost harder to survive after domestic abuse, after one has left the domestic abuse environment. For me particularly, it was one of the hardest things that I've had to overcome, in spite of the fact that I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew I couldn't survive in the environment. Leaving the environment felt worse than if I had been in it or if I had stayed in it for some reason. And what some of these reasons is that feeling that you can't survive, the thoughts and the words that they have put into your head all through the time you were with them, that you can't survive on your own. You can't amount to anything on your own. No one else can put up with you. You're too much trouble. You're so much blah, blah, blah. So it's all feelings of inferiority. It's all feelings of being helpless, feelings of being alone. That's one of the key feelings that I know that I experienced after I'd left. Because in the first place, they try to isolate you from people around you, people who could have been of help to you. So they put you in this little bubble, and then you find yourself, after you have left, you find yourself struggling to overcome the thoughts and the words that they have put in your head all through. So you feel very helpless. There's a lot of despair. There's a lot of guilt and shame, which is one of the key some of the key emotions and that I struggled with in my own experience. And I know that a lot of people I've had conversations with a lot of people who have gone through this, and it's the same feelings of guilt and shame. It's funny how the abuser on one hand is the perpetrator, but then we that supposedly are the victims or the survivors, as I like to put it, we're the ones that carry the feelings of guilt and shame. It's a whole conversation that I don't want to go into, but I would just want to say that these feelings of guilt and shame are totally unfounded. In the first place, these are the perpetrators' weapons that they have used, and the first thing that you have to do is to try to distance yourself mentally from this. In the first place, like I talked about in my previous video, you have to distance yourself physically from the abuser and whatever weapons that they have in their arsenal to use against you. But you have to also distance to recover and heal from this. You have to distance yourself mentally as well. And again, like I said, it is really hard, particularly if you have been under their thumb for years, or no matter, or they happen to use really strong weapons. I like to call them weapons. Use really strong weapons against you to try to suppress you, to oppress you. So it is because anything that you overcome physically has to be overcome mentally in the first place. Okay, so you have to find a way to get over those negative emotions that they have put into you, those negative words that they have put into you, those negative actions that have made you feel the way you feel, made you feel less of who you are, because that's where the struggle really is. No matter how many people around you tell you you are worth it, you are beautiful, you are good, you are kind, you are a handsome man, you're a wonderful person, you will not believe these words if you do not accept them for yourself first. And accepting these words for yourself first comes from a place of mentally removing yourself from all the negative words that they have put to you. I'm saying it as simple as it sounds, but trust me when I tell you that it is really, really hard. Okay, it is really, really hard. Now I have just three to be fair, just 3 items that I use that I feel like were the hallmarks of my survival kits. Okay, and the first one is something that I know that many people would not want to listen or hear about. Is counselling. I'm going to describe to you how I stumbled upon counselling. I had to live in this particular environment after I left the domestic abuse, where I could get as much help as I could to re-establish myself and so on and so forth. And one of the things that they offered me in that environment was counselling. And I thought to myself, nah, I'm not that bad. I'm fine. I'm a strong woman. I know what my worth is. I know that I have been through a bad experience, but I know that I can handle it. It's fine. Don't worry. Give it to other people who need it more. Those were my thoughts. And then gradually, for some reason as well, I just felt like things were going to go back to to normal in a sense. I strove for normality in the first few months. Nothing happened. Nothing normal happened. In fact, it started to get worse in certain areas. I don't want to go into details, but the point was that I woke up one morning, months down the line, and I just simply had no will to live again. I had a baby in my hand, and I just didn't have the will to get out of bed to take care of myself and take care of her. I had just totally lost the physical, mental, spiritual will to live. I didn't recognize how bad it was, but at that point, I was in a globe, in a bowl of despair. Nothing else mattered apart from the fact that I did not want to get up. I did not want to do anything to move my life forward because I felt like my life wasn't moving forward. You know, I didn't want the day to begin. I didn't want my life to continue. That's it. I'm just trying to put it as bluntly as possible. I don't want to make it sound like I'm beating around the bush. At that point, I didn't feel like I wanted to take my life, but I just didn't have the will to live. Okay, let me just carry on describing. And then, fortunately enough for me, because I had connected to myself through a church in my environment, the vicar of the church called me that afternoon around 12. At that point, I had still not gotten out of bed. And because I had gotten to a place where I had stopped picking people's calls, I didn't pick the call. It went to voicemail, and he called, and in the voicemail he asked if I and my daughter were willing to have lunch with him and his wife after church the next day. I remember it was a Saturday when that call happened. Speaking about it now even makes me a little bit teary, because it was the lifeline that I needed. It was like I was drowning and somebody threw a lifeline into the water. And you believe this, I grabbed it with both hands. It was not the fact that someone had called, because like I said, I wasn't picking people's calls. I don't know what it was, right, about this person, this minister of God, by the way, who had reached out to me. There were other people who had reached out to me before, who tried to tell me, look, it's okay, you can come to us and blah, blah, blah. But it didn't, for some reason, that wasn't it. But at that point, that day was when I needed that call, that very moment. And when it happened, it turned my life around. And the very next day, I called in for counselling, and I started my counselling. And it was one of the best decisions that I made after I left my domestic abuse environment. It was then because I realized how bad it had gotten mentally. Like I said, everything begins in your mind. Okay, so I went for counseling, and it went on for months. But it was in counseling that I was able to re-establish myself mentally. I would have probably gotten to that point, or this point where I am today, but it would have taken far longer, and I would have missed out on so much, so very much, that I could have enjoyed if I had continued to enjoy my despair or live in my despair, because I just didn't have an avenue to talk in the right way, in the right place. Like I said before, people were coming around. People were speaking to me, not coming around, because I was just not in a place to have people around me. People were calling me over the phone, asking me, what they could do to help me and so on and so forth. But it just did not work as much as counseling did for me. So that's the first thing I want to advise. Whatever it is you do, whatever it is that you feel like you have power to overcome, please, I encourage you, go for some counseling. Even if it's just twice or 2-3 times that you have an encounter with someone who you can talk to, someone impartial. That's the point. Someone impartial, someone professional enough to know what direction your life could take, or to give you, because this is what counseling did for me. Essentially, counseling gave me a different perspective, because I was so overcome by everything that happened, because I couldn't understand how my life had gotten to where it was, or what mistakes I had made. Like I said, the blame game was very, very paramount. I was ashamed. I was guilty for things the point being that I didn't understand how I could feel guilty and ashamed about things that I knew that were not wrong. I knew that I had given my best self to these people, and yet I was the one feeling guilty, and I could not reconcile that part. And it also got to the point where I felt all of everything that I had done, I had tried to change who I was, which is something that I had to discuss intensely with the counselor. I had tried to change who I was to make them feel better about me, to make them like me more, to make them love me more. And so at that point when I had to go for counseling, I could not recognize myself anymore. I felt like I had totally lost my identity. But then, like I said, with the right perspective, I realized that I hadn't. You haven't lost your identity, my dear. You haven't lost the essence of who you are. You have just been crowded by other emotions and other things that are not you. And all you need to do is go back to the foundation, go back to who you were, and build gradually from there. That's what it takes. Face the negative emotions, face the anger, face the shame, face the guilt, and tell it, not today. I'm not with you today anymore. That's it. This is where I draw the line. That's it. And then you walk from there. Because as hard as surviving domestic abuse is, it is also very easy. All you need is the right perspective. So I encourage you, if nothing else you take from this video today, from this little short story that I've given you about my personal experience and my own struggles, is this. Whatever it is, it might not even have to be surviving domestic abuse. It might just be some trauma that you're having to deal with. Whatever it is, just let me let you know today that having the right perspective changes everything. Having the right perspective. And this takes me on to the second and third points, which I'll just talk about and then I'll go. Is this, that you need to find the right support system around you. Not everyone would be for you at the point when you need them most. I'm not saying that right. There will be many people who will want to help you, who will come to help you from the right place and the right perspective as well. But they might not be right for you at that point in your life. It will be a hard decision to make, but it's a very important one that I had to make for myself. For some reason, I was able to recognize that very early. And I hurt a lot of people by telling them, I couldn't be your friend right now. I can't be your friend right now. But I had to do that to get to a place of acceptance for myself. And this is what I want to focus on again. Whatever it is you're going through, just remember, your mental health comes first. You cannot be friends and best friends with people if you're not in the right place mentally for yourself. So take care of yourself first. Go for counseling. And my third point is this. You believe in God. I cannot tell you how much my faith in God made me survive all that I had been through. I can never, ever describe it to you. But I can tell you that it saved my life. It saved my life and it saved my daughter's life. So you believe in God. If you haven't found faith, please find faith. Because I have so much to talk about that, but I don't want to go into all the details. But I can tell you that simple prayers that I made, simple prayers that I cried, tears that I cried into my pillow at night, were what I felt better about by the next day. Sometimes the answers were not as immediate as I wanted them, but they made me feel better first. And it gave me direction to the point where I can talk to you now with the happiest heart that you can imagine. I can talk to you now with the most perfect aura around me. Because this is another last thing that I'm going to talk about before I go. In healing and surviving from domestic abuse, in recovering from all that trauma, you have to accept for yourself that you need this, that you want this, that you can't move on without this. One of the things that my counselor, I know I hate to brag about this, but I have to. One of the things that my counselor said to me when we were concluding our months of therapy is that she said she found me to be one of her best patients, let's call it that, because she never saw anyone who had the willingness, who had the passion for getting better as much as I did. Because I wanted to be better. I knew for myself that I could not carry on like this. This is me. I'm not a depressed or suicidal person. I need to get out of this rut. So I wanted whatever way ideas that she had for me to feel better or to talk about stuff or to do things. I made sure that I pursued them. And if they weren't right for me, I stopped them. But I always stuck to wanting to be better. So whatever it is in your life that you do today, whatever actions that you're taking, whatever words that are coming out of your mouth, whatever thoughts that are in your head, whatever path you want your career to take or your life to take, make sure, my dear, make sure that all of these parts, all of these thoughts, everything is pursued towards making you a better version of yourself. your happiest self, your happiest self if possible. Because what else is in this life than to make yourself the best version of yourself, so that you're happy and you're fulfilled and you've got purpose and you're pursuing that purpose. So my dear, in the end, the long and short of this entire story that I've talked about for more minutes than I planned to is this: surviving domestic abuse might be very, very difficult, but believe me, it starts and ends with you. You have made the first and most important choice about leaving that environment. Now it's time for you to take an even stronger and more important choice by making sure that you will recover from it completely and absolutely, so that you can be happy again, because you deserve happiness. You are worth it. You are worth it. You matter. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye. And I hope that all of our lives blend together to the point where we are the best versions of ourselves and we make everyone around us the best versions of yourself. Have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye.